Welcome to Hashtag with Muhumuza. This is a place where we help you unravel social constructs, discuss self-development in line with mental health, emotional well-being, and everything in between that directly or indirectly affects us in the millennial world around us. If you're hearing my voice for the first time and are the kind of person who is not scared of being a better version of yourself even if it requires you to contradict who you were 24 hours ago, consider this your virtual home. I'm your host, Muhumuza, and I cannot wait to engage with you in the various conversations. Addiction can be a challenging and a life-altering experience that affects not only an individual but their loved ones as well. However, recovery is possible and it is a journey worth taking. In this episode, I'm seated with Brian Muhumuza and he will be taking us through his 9-year journey of addiction recovery. If anything resonates with you during our conversation, do not hesitate to share with us on social media and be sure to use the hashtag HTNKInSession. Here's our conversation. Brian, welcome to Hashtag with Muhumuza.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
I'm
seeing you for the first time. I don't know you much.
Yeah.
Those are all confessions listeners need to be aware of. So there is so much information that is going to be new to me.
Yes.
Brian is recovery.
Yes, I'm in recovery, a person in recovery.
Yes. So before we get into the whole story and how you got to that space of recovery, can you introduce yourself to someone who does not have any idea of who you are?
Okay, so my name's Brian Muhumuza. I'm a person in recovery professionally. I'm an addictions counselor. I've recently moved to Uganda. I've been working in rehab facilities in Johannesburg, South Africa for the last couple of 7 years. Basically, in a nutshell, that's who I am and what I do.
When you talk about a person in recovery, why do you find it very important for you to mention that?
Because we know everyone knows addiction. Everyone knows, substance use disorders. Everyone knows people that use drugs and people that use alcohol and all that stuff. And there's not a lot of people that know people that have been through that and they're in recovery and they've come out the other side. Mm-hmm. I think it's important, and I think that's my biggest objective, to give face to recovery, give face to people. And I'm not the only one. There's plenty of people in Uganda and Kampala and Africa and, globally. And it's important that message becomes as loud as addiction itself. Yeah.
It becomes as loud as addiction itself.
Yeah, because addiction is loud. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the stories in the news. Then that needs to shift so that the people that are out there and are struggling can, have hope as well. Yeah.
How did you get to that space where... I was trying to avoid the word space. I feel like I overuse it.
Which is fine, I guess, and I understand where you're coming from.
How did you get to that space where you were experiencing addiction?
For me, it was a party. I mean, I grew up in Kampala, and if you socially wanted to fit in, a big part of it was hanging out in bars and having a good time, really. Friday, we know Friday is drinking, Saturday is drinking, Sunday is drinking at the beach. For me, I won't lie, it was just a good time. It was really having a blast. And I think when I tried to stop, I didn't know I had a problem, because for me it was just a never-ending party.
When did this partying start?
Started when I was 13. I have an interesting story. As I was coming through here, I passed Sharing Hall in Zambia, and growing up, I grew up in Luzira. Growing up, you would save up money as kids. We would save up money for Christmas and for New Year's, because Sharing had end of year bash for all the teens in Kampala.
Wow.
Yeah. And we would save up. I mean, I personally would save up money the whole year so that I can afford alcohol on the New Year's party.
At the age of 13?
At the age of 13, yeah. At the age of 13.
Sharing, I don't know. I don't have so much understanding of what transpires there.
Yeah.
Isn't it owned by the church or something?
It is. It's actually a community initiative, right? But they had, and I think it sort of was like a platform for upcoming artists. I wasn't really an upcoming artist at all, but I just looked for where the party was.
But it being, because what is really confusing me is that we used Sharing Hall when I was down there. What's the school? St. Joseph's in Zambia. We used it a lot for the, I think, gatherings of the clubs and things like that. So I had this understanding that it's a youth center that is under the church.
Yeah.
That is my imagination.
Yeah.
So if there are kids going there and they're not protected from substance use or alcohol use, it's what?
Yeah, I know. But I think I also understand as a kid abusing alcohol, putting it out there. It's, you're doing something wrong. So, and a big part of addiction is hiding it. So even when you're drinking, you're not out there showing that you're drinking. But if a party starts at 10, it would be a trans day thing. And what would happen on New Year's Day is that it stops at midnight once the fireworks and that stuff starts happening. So that's when you would take advantage of the dark and the whole thing. It's not like our drinking was endorsed or was monitored by anyone. We were, using the dark corners and stuff like that.
But then, how long did you do that? For how many years were you going to Sharing Hall?
3 years.
3 years?
For about 3 years, yeah.
13?
13, 14,
It is midnight
15.
and you're not home.
Yeah.
What are your parents saying?
It's and that's why I would make it a big deal, because you can abide by all the homely rules every day of the year except for that day. Yes, because it's a party and everyone understands.
13, you're young.
I am young, for sure. I am young. But I was also with other guys that were not that young. And I think there was something about our parents knowing that you're not going alone. They probably think you're in the neighborhood, but you've gotten a taxi from Luzera to Zambia. They don't know where you are. They don't know what you're doing.
Wow.
Yeah, and at that time I think I would have just a beer. I think I would have a beer or two. I don't remember the quantity, but I would never get drunk and get into situations, because usually what would happen is you have to go back home and show face and be stable.
Yeah.
But by the time I think we'd get back home, our folks would be sleeping or something like that.
You had like elder siblings that were guiding
No,
you?
I had a big brother, big brother, who was a DJ. Yeah, he was a DJ, so he wouldn't see what I was doing. But I am the eldest from my mother. So
wait, he wasn't seeing what you were doing,
because he was a DJ as well.
But when he got to the point of going back home, he didn't notice anything still.
Nah, no one noticed, and I think that's why I stuck in addiction for a long time, because I had mastered the art of hiding it.
Wow.
Yeah, even when people hear that I started drinking at 13, they won't believe it, because no one knew I was drinking. Now, because of recovery, I've had to look at, okay, so when did this problem begin? And initially it wasn't a problem, like I said, but the progression, we call it the progression of the disease.
Okay.
It progresses. And usually you're so invested in hiding it. So no one, no matter how much they love you, no matter how much they care about you, no one really notices until it gets out of hand.
I still want to get to the root.
Yes, yes.
13?
13, yeah.
You are in senior one, I'm assuming.
Yes, that's senior one, yeah. Senior one.
What made you curious?
I think, and it's quite crazy, because when I was in boarding school, and I would see people get into trouble for drinking. And I remember telling myself, I'm never getting in trouble for drinking.
What kind of trouble were you saying?
They would jump the fence and go get smashed and come back and puke all over the dormitories or get suspended or stuff like that. My mom was very strict on education, so I knew that I don't have that space. So that's why I wouldn't drink the whole year. I would only drink on that year. But I really loved what alcohol did for me. I was bullied as a kid. I just learned Uganda. I came to Kampala and had to learn the language. I was a very small kid. So I was bullied a lot, socially, actually. I was bullied. There were so many features about me that were trying to shape out, and people bullied me. And I knew that in order for me, I needed something, and alcohol made me relax. It made me forget everything that I was feeling. It actually did its job, really, because I was a very insecure kid. But when I was drinking, man, I was loud, I was smart, I was calculating, I was, big, I was everything that I dreamt of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now I'm looking at it as someone coming from, I will never do that. I'm supposed to be sticking with my education.
Yeah.
To, hey, this seems to be able to work.
Yeah.
Was it like some sort of a surprise, like, oh my God, I feel elated?
Yeah. It was a surprise. And I remember my first getting drunk. It was a few years before that, before 13. Family, they pass you a drink. And I remember getting drunk.
Family passing you a drink?
Yeah.
At what age?
Must have been I was in P6.
But passing it how? Like a
Like
sip?
there was an uncle
Ama
of
a
mine,
bottle.
and I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. Really, I'm just being honest here because that's my story. That's a story I've had to embrace as well, not hide anything about my story. There was, I don't know if you know the local brew that they serve pots.
Malwa.
Marwa, yeah, Marwa. And he would, every Saturday, every Sunday, he would.
I took Malwa.
Yeah.
When I was about 4, I think.
It's hot, right? It's hot.
It
It's
wasn't
quite
hot.
chilled.
I don't remember. I don't remember what it was like.
They used to put hot water in it. That's what I remember.
But I don't think it's hot. I don't think they drink it hot.
They do. They do because they have to dilute it, and I think the only way they dilute it is with hot water.
I think that's in preparation.
Really?
Why would someone drink hot brew?
You've never taken. You should. I promise you, people that they should vouch for.
I don't think.
For hot, it is and you know what's
think they
crazy?
take it hot.
Because they buy it once and then they keep refilling it with hot water.
Okay, I don't know the process of preparing. I don't know the process of preparing.
Yeah. You should. Do you have any friends that?
Because I
take
tested
Mara?
it. I tested it on a friend's graduation.
Yeah. Was it Mara? Because there's Kwete and then there's Mara.
That thing that Atesotek. So I don't know what it was.
Yes, with a straw.
But I'm sure it's Malwa.
Yeah, with a straw.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is
But
nice.
I don't think
hot.
it has to be hot.
The hotter, the better. I
don't
promise
remember.
You. Anyway, so this guy, not teased me, but it's we're in a home. So he's like, "Oh, do you want to test?" And I tested it, and I got drunk, and I got smart, and I said a lot of things, and I puked, and all of that stuff.
I'm very ignorant. I'm noticing.
Yeah.
I had no idea that Malwa gets people drunk.
It does.
I'm very ignorant. I'm just confirming my ignorance right now.
For sure. My first getting drunk wasn't on beer. It was Mara.
How much did you take?
I don't know. It was hot. It was hot and nice.
Why would someone take hot beer?
I don't know, but I guess it tastes better when it's hot. So I remember waking up and having a hangover, and and the consequence of hangover.
But I think you weren't taking Malwa.
I was. I promise.
It must be something else.
I promise you.
I'm convinced it's something else. Maybe it was mixed with something else.
Because
I need to be educated.
What's interesting is. So that was the first time I participated in it, but I had been going to buy for my uncle numerous times before they allowed to have a bit of it. Mm-hmm. And even after that incident, there was like the ban, Brian, touching these things again. But I had noted how I felt, that even despite the consequences, I had felt something different. I had felt at ease. I had felt free. There was like a burden of I don't know what that had been lifted off me. And I remember thinking, I'm going to try this again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes when people get drunk the first time, they get repulsed. I didn't have that experience. So for me, alcohol did for me something, and I pursued that until my addiction.
When you get to go back to the memory lane.
Yes.
How long do you think it took for you to get into the stage of addiction?
Okay, let's see. So when I finished high school, I had the vacation. A couple of things happened through my school. My mom went abroad, and by the time I finished senior 6, remember my only objective was to do school, right? To study. So it felt like I'm being good and understanding, and I'm being all the good boy things just to finish school.
Yeah.
And after I finish school, then I'll be free to do whatever I want.
You were looking forward to the freedom.
Yes, to the freedom. So when I finished high school in 2020, crazy. It can't be 2010 because 2010 I finished university. In 2006.
Okay.
2006, I finished school in November, and I drank from the moment I finished school every day until I joined university. Every day I drank alcohol.
Was it in celebration?
It was accessible. I had a friend that owned a bar.
A friend who was a lot older than you are.
A lot older, yeah. And, I would drink even if I didn't have money. I didn't drink a lot, but I drank consistently. So every day, in vacation, you have nothing to do really. You stick by home until around 4, then you go visit your friend. Your friend has a bar. You drink like 3 plastics. They're called plastic. I don't know, Buveda. Buveda, right?
Oh.
The sachets. Yeah, I was a student. I couldn't afford alcohol in bottles and wine and stuff like that.
That is really crude, isn't it?
Yeah, it is crude. And I think that's why, I stopped at an early age because I blew my tolerance right out of the way. So I think that drinking for 8 months is when it went from drinking to addiction. And it's quite interesting because addiction sometimes, you can be addicted without consequences. But it's only addiction if you try and stop and you can't stop. So at that age, I didn't have a lot of consequences. I wasn't getting into trouble for drinking. I wasn't getting into fights. I was a very happy drinker. But I knew that I couldn't stay a day without drinking. I knew that for sure. There was something about me not drinking that I hated. I couldn't. I just couldn't. No.
When you talk about yourself as a happy drinker, are we looking at you being sad before drinking and then there is happiness coming all over your soul after you drink?
No, I'm not getting into fights. Happy drinker means into fights. I'm not getting violent. I'm not creating conflict because of my drinking.
Yeah, but when you're walking from home, going to the bar.
Yeah. I'm not sad. I'm just excited.
You're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've already planned out how much I'm going to drink.
Oh.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Did you ever come to a place of, there are these challenges, mostly in exercises? I would refer to that because that's what I might understand. Like today you might do 2 push-ups and you're like, let me challenge myself and I see if I can do 10 push-ups.
No.
You didn't get to that?
No, I didn't get to that. It was very gradual. And the hardest thing about, and I hope that listeners can relate to this, is that you don't know it's a problem until later on in my, when I start challenging myself, like you're saying. And then that's where I realized, oh, okay, we have a problem. Eventually when, and I think we'll probably get to that in a bit. I was just able to, even in school, I didn't have problems in school because of my drinking. Yes, I might have blown my tuition a couple of times here and there. My God. But I wasn't getting into trouble because of my drinking. I was just able to manipulate myself through getting where I am now.
Yeah. Can you take us through what it was like for you to be struggling with addiction?
Yeah.
Can you paint for us a picture?
Yeah, so it's confusing. I was confused because I knew deep down. So what happened was, it was easy for me to drink as a student and get away with stuff. But then when I finished school, I got a job. I got a job on radio. I got a job in print. And these jobs thrive on time, like on a schedule and stuff like that. Now, at this time, I couldn't sleep before drinking. And it meant that I was never on time in the morning. So even when opportunities arose that needed for someone to be out there in the field at 7, I would pass them on. Even sometimes when I had appointments with people, like I remember this interview that I had to meet someone at 9 a.m. and I woke up at 11 a.m. That's when the responsibilities of work started inconveniencing my drinking. I didn't realize, but I thought of stopping. Now, I looked around me and I had never seen anyone stop.
You looked around you?
Yeah.
Does that mean you had people already struggling with the addiction?
I wouldn't tell. I wouldn't know. But there's no one I would ask. There was no one to ask, how did you stop? Everyone that I knew was still drinking and it was normal. But I knew deep down, I was hanging out in the wrong places. I had started hanging out in dingy places, like dingy, on times that I didn't have money, I would have to end up in places where you get crude waraji, for chukumi, that stuff. And of course, at that time,
chukumi is like for how many milliliters are those?
It's like a shot.
A shot,
like a shot of crude waraji.
So you just pass on the coin.
Yeah, you go with 500 because the coin won't be enough. You go with 500 or 1,000. I was going into Kasubi, into Chivlu, into...
That's like in the slums?
Yeah, in the slums. But it was also quite deceitful because that part that I'm telling you now, no one knew. When I didn't have money, because I had to drink every day. So what usually happens is when I get paid, I'm hanging out with everyone else that drinks normally. The clubs and all that stuff. But when in the days that I don't have money and I have to drink every day, I go to the slums.
Where it's cheaper.
Where it's cheaper, where I can drink every day. And I think that's where the problems began, because that's when I started missing work. That's why I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. There's a place I actually passed, behind Mapela House.
Yeah.
Behind, there's a street. There used to be Sax Pub and all those. It was a very dingy place.
I don't know about the pubs.
Okay, so they used
But I don't know about the pubs.
Okay.
No, behind Mapela there was Pioneer Mall.
Yeah, on the other side, yes. Pioneer Mall that has now been removed. But there's a dingy place. I think the listeners that know what I'm talking about there used to be prostitutes on that street and places that sell bouvet in the night and stuff like that. And I would come from work and put off my tie, put off my shirt. I would have a t-shirt in my bag and put them in the bag and just pretend like I'm walking, and then just get into the dark and then sit there and then have as many buffets as I want, and then try and make my way home.
Isn't that late in the night?
It is late in the night sometimes.
So you had to make sure that you leave work late?
Yeah, I'll leave around 8, 7.
When everyone is gone?
When everyone is gone and no one will see me. Even me hiding on those streets was making sure that people don't see me. And then I would go home and sometimes, just totally change clothes, put on dirty clothes so that I would go to the Bufundas in Subi, Nankulabi, Wandegea. And the Bufundas, like the really, really dingy places, to make sure that I participate in my addiction as much as I could. Yeah.
Well, how destructive was it when it came to you managing your life?
I was homeless for a bit. I was homeless for about a year.
What happened? How did you end up homeless?
So I was staying at my stepmom's place, my stepfather's place. May his soul rest in peace. He had took me under when my mom went abroad. So I think my mom realized there was a problem with the way I was managing my money. So she asked that my stepdad takes care of me and then manages all the finances. So at that time I was staying at his place, and, addiction doesn't allow you to come back home early and stuff like that. You don't take responsibility for anything. And so they asked me to leave kindly. And then I left. And when I left, I didn't have any place to stay. So I went back to the hostel that I was at as a student. But I didn't have any tuition, right? I wasn't a student anymore. I didn't have money so I would convince my classmates or friends or cousins who were staying around Makerere. Like I would call you around 5, 4 and say, hi, how are you doing? I want to see you. And then you'd say, yeah, come through. I'm at the hostel. And then I would come, tell you stories, and then ask you if I could lay on the ground, lay any space that you have. Can I just sleep over? I don't have a place to stay for now. So I was staying with different people. And then sometimes when I wouldn't have anyone to call, I would just hang out at bars, just become a patron of one bar and just tell them you don't have money and promise them, because I had an income at the end of every month. Tell them, dude, can I sleep over for a night? When I get paid and sort myself out, I'll reimburse you handsomely. And sometimes I wouldn't have any place to stay, so I would just stay on the street. Get drunk as much as you can and just put your head in your legs and just squat on a veranda.
And then go to work the following day.
And then try and go to work the next day. I think the most important thing is you don't look like your circumstances. So you go in there, you put up a front.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
You don't... Most of these things, it's just very much like a movie. You made stories as such. You don't expect them to hear them in as far as workspaces are concerned. You would have this imagination that someone has failed on their life and they have nothing going on with themselves. Like most people that we see on the streets, like from childhood. You see them on the streets. There are some faces that I know right now that I've seen on the streets for a very long time. And of course, I'm sure they don't have jobs. So to hear that someone has a job, they have their family, they just push them out.
What I always think is that everyone you see on the street was someday, somehow in someone's home. Either in school. Addiction is a fall. It is a fall, really. You have to have something and lose it in order to count it as addiction. And a lot of people right now, you might have a job, you might have everything going on for you. But the consequences is you end up, like you were asking me, the dysfunctional lifestyle. Your life becomes unmanageable. It's a big part of addiction, is that your life becomes truly unmanageable. I was very lucky that I kept a job, but I don't know how long I would have stringed that together. Luckily, as you might know, in the media, it's quite, you're up and down. You're not seated on a desk constantly. So it's up and down. You go out in the field, you find a story, whatever it is. And that helped me really. That kind of lifestyle helped me in a way. Yeah.
Because at least you weren't idle?
Yeah, I wasn't idle, but I also wasn't monitored.
By monitoring, what do you mean?
Like, for example, if I worked on a till, if I worked in a bank and I had to sit at a till.
Oh, right.
Yeah, all eyes would be on me. My dysfunction would show. I would show up
right,
very unable to function. But being a journalist, you come in, you clock in, and then you say, oh, I'm working on a story. And then you go take a nap in a park somewhere or stuff like that. And it was a weekly newspaper. So at the time, all you needed to do is produce your story. And because I wanted money, I would also help out in circulation. So I was always on the move. And that made... I was actually always on the move. No, my family didn't know what was going on. My friends didn't know what was going on. My colleagues didn't know what was going on. My girlfriend at the time didn't know what was going on.
Your girlfriend?
Yeah. No one knew what was going on in my life.
Girlfriend?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I feel like that's the first person that should have noticed there is a mess somewhere.
She noticed, but she didn't know how extensive it was. Yeah. She was the first person, actually, who made me think. I told her, I think I'm struggling with drinking. And she said,
which year are we looking at now?
Sorry?
Which year are we looking at?
This is about 2013. 2013, yeah.
2013, you said you graduated in
2010.
10?
Yes, 2010.
And for these 3 years, you're working?
I'm more dysfunctionally working. I'm getting jobs here and there. I even did a gig for South Sudan newspaper because I needed money. It was very easy. If I don't have money, I can't drink.
So you were working so that you can afford
alcohol, for sure. Yeah, you could say that.
No other goal?
Nope. Nothing else.
Why?
Yeah. Money is important. If you have an addiction, money is the most important thing.
Because you have to find your happiness in courts.
Yeah. If you don't have money, what are you going to do? Because I was willing to do anything for money at that stage.
So that you can drink.
Yep. I was willing. I had 3 jobs. I had a PR job. I had a teaching job. I had a journalist job.
All of these to secure your drinking?
Yep. Make sure that I have money to drink.
The way you are securing your future is different. I hope this is not what the government is doing to us.
The incentives were quite different, quite irrational when I think of it now. Yeah.
I'm surprised when you talk about how your family, your girlfriend also took long.
Yeah.
Your family, friends took long to notice or even find out. Or they weren't even aware at all. Because most of the times, the people that are with us, that are struggling with addiction, the ones that are around them sometimes are also affected.
Yeah.
Not even sometimes.
But most times.
Most times they are usually affected.
Impacted, so for sure.
How were you managing with this?
It breaks my heart because I think that was the hardest thing. I'm a firstborn in my family. And in a way, I was like a pillar. Some of the things that I did were the first from our family. And I had siblings that looked up to me. And I had a mother that would sacrifice anything to give me the best education ever. And of course, they felt, I think my kid brother and my mother felt like I was gone. They felt like, because towards the end.
When was that?
Towards the end, before treatment, like 6 months before treatment, 2013, around October.
So 2013 is when your girlfriend noticed?
Earlier on, around Feb or March.
And then you also told her you think you were struggling?
Yeah, and then she told me, why don't you stop? And it was baffling.
That question.
Yeah, it was like...
The question is hard.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Why don't I stop? Is that like an option? I didn't know that was an option. And I told her I can't stop. And me telling her I can't stop, the penny dropped. Because I wouldn't lie to myself anymore. When you know, and now I know. But back then, the reality that I would rather lose this girl than stop drinking.
Wait, you had gotten to that?
Because, no, I hadn't.
So if you were in that kind of life where you were saying, between you and the bottle, I'll choose the bottle.
Yeah. Because if you are asking me to stop,
you don't like me.
You don't love me. You don't get me. You don't understand me.
Oh my God.
How dare you ask me to stop? Are you out of your mind? I mean, what do you mean stop? And then what? And what do I do after I've stopped? What life am I gonna live? So that was the first time that I acknowledged to someone that I had a problem. And the shock factor was that I wasn't willing to stop.
Mm-hmm. So why did you call it a struggle if you were not willing to stop?
Because I couldn't fathom a life. I didn't even know people stop. I honestly will tell you now, Nabuguzi, that I knew I was going to drink until I die. I knew I had come to terms with that reality that I was going to drink because I had never seen anyone stop.
Yeah.
I didn't have a clue that people stop. I knew that people stop when they go to churches, but I wasn't going to go to church to stop. I knew that people stop when, something, but I wasn't going to stop. And it was an unfathomable idea of stopping. Yeah.
And then there is your mother. You're talking about your mother and your younger sibling feeling like you're a gone case.
Yeah.
At what point did you start your recovery journey? What might have informed your space of inspiration that, hey, it's time for me to recover?
Okay.
If you're coming from, between you and this, I'm taking this route.
Yeah.
And now you're talking about 9 years, is it?
9 years.
In recovery.
9 years.
So how then did you start this journey of recovery?
Yeah, I mean, I believe in something out there that is really, really, I don't know, guiding, I guess. 5-6 years before then, my mom did a psychiatric course at South Africa. She was already a nurse, but she went, for upgrade and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And because I was homeless towards the end, she told me, you know what? She told me, Brian, if you want a place to stay, you can. She didn't know I was homeless, but she said, you know what? I think you would do much better if you're here, staying at my place. So of course I took up the offer because I was spending a lot of money on rent in a house that I hardly lived in. So then I accepted the offer to stay with her. And when I stayed with her, she saw how bad it was. Mm-hmm. And she saw it, some things she saw that, a mother should never have to see from their own child. She saw that I was coming back at 4 a.m. drunk. She saw that sometimes I would sleep out through the day. She saw that I would pass out. By the time I stopped drinking, I was a blackout drinker. I did not stop until I blacked out. There were so many things that she saw. And what happened was one day, she asked me, do you want to stop? And I just cried and I said, I don't know if I can stop. She says, no, there are people stopping. There's help. And I asked her what sort of help is there. And she said, don't worry, I'll bring something for you. And so we had this conversation like on a Friday, and then on a Sunday, she brought me medication. She had gone and consulted on my behalf in the Butabika facility, National Referral Hospital, and they'd given her 3 types of medication. There was vitamin B, there was antidepressant, and there was the whole regimen for detox and stuff like that. So she gave it to me and she told me, you know what, for these days you don't have to drink. I'm giving you this med for 5 days. You don't have to drink. And it helped me for 3 days. But, I'm an alcoholic. I love to drink. So 3 days later, I was drinking again, and now I was drinking at the same time taking medication. But I had enjoyed those 3 days of sobriety. Really.
You enjoyed them?
Yeah, I had.
What was different?
I was at peace. I wasn't mentally obsessing about drinking every minute of the day. I was a bit calm those 3 days. I was more like, I was enjoying the meals. I was enjoying the relationship I have with my family. For those 3 days, it might have been very little days, but it showed me that actually stopping isn't that bad, And of course, what happened was because I relapsed, we call it a relapse when you stop with the intention of stopping. And then you drink again, it's called a relapse. Yeah. And so I relapsed and it got way out of hand. I'm a bit dramatic like that.
3 days is I don't know. 3 days, I wouldn't demand so much from someone.
Yeah, I didn't know then. I was like, yeah, I've got this, this is the, yeah, this is it now.
So what happened on the fourth day?
I was bored. I was bored. I didn't have structure. And that's one thing that Recovery House taught me, is to create structure in my life. Structure is quite very, very important now, today. So anyway, 3 days later, I called her. 4 days later, I called and said, where did you get that stuff from? And she told me, I got that medication from Butabika. I don't know the actual name of Butabika, but there's a unit there called Alcohol and Drug Unit. And she told me, you can go there and see if they can help you. And I went there and I consulted. And that was the beginning of my recovery journey, really. It took me a while to get it, because I started trying to stop in August. And I was only able to stop in Jan. The 5th of Jan 2014 is my sobriety birth date.
Oh, yeah. So is that like working through 5 months?
It was 3 months. Initially it was 14 days. So I went there because, I didn't know what I was talking about. I was still egotistical. I thought they would give me like a pill, and I would take the pill and I would get solved. They took me to a different facility. I think it's a stabilization facility. They didn't take me to the ADU. And after 14 days, I wanted to leave. I had a job. I was telling everyone, I have a job. I have to go back. You guys have kept me here for long. I'll be able to stay sober. All that stuff that people say when they want to leave treatment. And so I left after 14 days. But I hadn't learned anything. I didn't know what my problem was. I didn't know how I'm going to cope on the outside. I was just I don't know how to explain it, maybe deluded. And of course, I left and I relapsed again. And this time round, on the second admission, my mom took me and insisted they take me. Not insisted, but she made sure I'm taken to the alcohol and drug unit. And that's where my recovery journey started, really. I think most importantly, it was the humbling experience, to admit, I think, and this is the biggest challenge about addiction, is that you have to admit it's a problem.
Yeah. That's why I was very surprised when you talked about it as a problem, but you couldn't stop. It's like,
No, you can't. Because once you admit it's a problem, your mindset shifts to trying to solve it.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's why I was saying, how were you admitting to your girlfriend that this is a problem?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was a problem financially and socially and all that stuff, but I wasn't willing to stop because my mindset, and I've used the word unfathomable a lot because I think that's how I can only explain it. I could not fathom the idea that I can stop.
Yeah.
I wanted to continue drinking without the consequences, without the debts, without...
Eat a lot without gaining weight.
Yes, I wanted to do that. And it wasn't working. And so when people challenged me on stopping, I would look at them like they're crazy. Like, what do you mean stop? What do you mean stop? And I know there's a lot of stigma on the facility with Butabika.
I actually wanted to ask you, so as someone who has been both in Butabika and have been working in Johannesburg, what do you feel like are the different practices in helping people in recovery? How different are their practices from what's happening?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been to ADU in a while. I actually plan to visit
from the last time you were here.
Yeah. But
what
I think
differences could you have seen? I
think when I was in ADU back then, it wasn't a disease really back then. It was a choice. And one of the things that I realized in Johannesburg, in all the facilities that I've worked with in Johannesburg, was that they treated these human... I mean, I'll give you a scenario, right? So when I went into ADU, I had to put on a uniform and get my key, and stuff like that. It's a humbling experience, I won't lie. But all of a sudden, you seem like a prisoner, unfortunately, right? And maybe that's how they do. And I'm not, because that place saved my life, I'm not really shedding bad light on it. But one thing that Johannesburg showed me was how they treat mental health issues with respect, with professionalism, with kindness, understanding, with compassion. There are facilities in Johannesburg that look like hotels. And they're not paying a lot, but they understand that this person, in order to heal, they need a very healthy space. And they've created these healthy spaces where it's beautiful. I mean, when I went there, my first job, I was working as a halfway house manager, and it was like a hotel. Yeah. Really, there was a fridge, there was a TV, there were lounges, there were books on shelves. It was a home. They had, and I don't think it was because of the development. No, I think it is a mindset that people in South Africa recognize and realize that addiction is a disease.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't put someone struggling with cancer in
confinement.
In confinement and hostile environment. You wouldn't, you know. You'd put them in a space that allows them to heal. You'd check on them and you know, give them the best support, the best meals and stuff like that, because you're trying to empower them to actually overcome it. And I think that's what I realized was different, is how we as Ugandans look at addiction like a personal choice. And I've had this conversation with millions of people. It irritates me. It frustrates me. You know, I always tell people, you should Google addiction. You should Google it. It's a disease.
Google doesn't give everything.
It does. When you Google, I think the World WHO definition of addiction should come up, at least in the first top searches. And it is defined as an incurable, treatable, manageable disease, you know, with symptoms like anything else. And people do overcome it. You know, they do overcome it long term.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Yeah.
How long were you admitted in Butabika?
4 months.
4 months?
Yeah.
Only?
Yeah, 4 months.
Only?
Yeah.
You didn't turn back?
3 months, turned back, and then 4 months in general, because I left in November, I relapsed in December, and then I went back in December, and at the beginning of Jan, on the 4th of Jan, I arrived in Butabika for my third stint. That stint lasted about 6 days. I was pleading and begging to be admitted again into ADU. There was something that happened that I think is my turning point. So I left treatment in November. I was admitted in ADU in August. I left in November, and I was able to stay clean and sober for those days. And then on 24th of December, I felt left out because everyone was having a good time and stuff like that. And I thought, no, man, you know what? I don't have a problem with drugs. I have a problem with alcohol, but I don't have a problem with drugs. And I experimented with a certain drug that I won't mention here. And so what happened was that led me back to alcohol. And from the 24th of December, 2013, up to the 4th of Jan, 2014, I have no recollection of what happened in those days. It was a total blackout. I was just waking up, using, blacking out, waking up, using, blacking out. And so I came on the 4th, that's when I came to, and I was in a psychiatric ward in Butabika still. And I had this realization that today I land up here knowing what's happening. I know I relapsed.
Yeah.
I know how much I screwed up. Next time this happens, I might land up in this ward and not be able to come to that realization that I've landed up in this ward.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was a scary thought, that I could actually not recover mentally from such a relapse again. And that was the last time I ever, used.
It's surprising. It feels like a very short time, but congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Are you having these celebrations every other year?
Yes, every year I go to my fellowship, group of people like me, and I celebrate, and I talk about my journey and celebrate. I usually make it a point to post on my social medias so that people can see that we do actually recover, because that's the
it's important for you to tell the story, because if you say that at that time when you're struggling, you had never heard of someone who recovers. So it helps that you're changing the narrative, of course.
Yes, that's my biggest objective. That's my biggest objective in life, is to, can you imagine how many people want to stop but can't?
I have a feeling there are so many. Because I'm learning from mostly the guests about what's happening in the party life. For someone who is always indoors, I don't know what's happening outside. But I've heard so many stories. And for the few that I've seen, of course, there are very many people struggling. Or sometimes I can walk into a pork joint. I'm a pork person. Sorry to my Muslim listeners. And the Hindu, I don't know. So those that advocate for animal rights, I'm very sorry. So you can enter a pork joint and you're seeing someone sleeping in the bar. Because I remember I was having a conversation with my cousin. I had gone out with him. And I told him, that guy, that's a problem. What I'm looking at is a problem.
And then he was like, no, he's happy. He's had a good time.
Yeah.
Maybe he got a good pay at the end of the day. He's drinking it.
Yeah.
And I asked him, would you do that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because he was dead asleep in the bar.
Yeah, that's me. That's someone else. That's our story.
He was dead asleep in the bar. And I told him, anyone would want to go home. You don't want to be sleeping in the bar like that.
And I understand the guy. You know, you're sleeping off that beat so that when you come back, you can do it again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's every alcoholic's story, really. But the landscape is changing, because I think there's a lot of people like us currently. The landscape is changing. There's a lot of facilities that actually do diagnosis, and that's something that is important as well. We don't know. It's the kind of thing, chicken or hen, what came first. But from my experience working in Johannesburg, there's a big correlation between addiction and mental health.
Of course.
And how they both play into each other. And I'm so fascinated by what I've seen, people creating facilities that deal with both. Both aspects of, because for a person, I was telling about my story as a kid, right? Starting out. I don't know what I was suffering with. Was I depressed? Was I anxious? What was going on? But that's
you talked about yourself being bullied.
Yeah.
And wanting to fit in. So
from
my perspective, I would understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. But I was trying to self-soothe, and a big part of addiction is people trying to self-soothe. Of course, not entirely, but a bit of it. And what I've realized is even in Kampala, in Uganda, there's people having that understanding now and creating places that help focus on both. I think it's incredible. I think, yes, the problem is there and it might get out of hand before it is solved. But I think it looks promising compared to when I was here back then to now. It is promising. It is promising.
How long have you been around?
About 2 weeks. 2 weeks, yeah.
You're already seeing a change in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I'm impressed. I'm excited, really. I did a lot of research as well. Because I was like, and that's what I told people, my colleagues, before I left. I was like, I hope that when I come home that I'm able to contribute to this space because I've given all I can to this space. But there is something in my heart that is still missing, and that is me helping my people. In any way that I can. And I was crossing fingers, hoping that when I finally get here, there will be spaces, I'm impressed with the work that you're doing, really. These are things that we would never talk about.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, I'm really, really impressed.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Since you've been working with a rehab facility, I'm going to ask you a question that has just come up in my mind, and I've never thought about it.
Please.
So it's just pop up, and if you don't have an answer, it's okay.
Yeah.
What does recovery look like? Does it mean that, because I've shared before on the podcast that I self-soothe with food. I'm an emotional eater sometimes. But it does not mean that...
You're addicted.
No, forget that. It does not mean that for me to walk around what I'm struggling with means that I don't eat anymore. I don't know if you know where I'm driving at.
Yeah.
So when you talk about recovery and addiction, does that mean that someone cannot even take a sip at all?
Completely. It's an absolute abstinence. But it also depends on the program. I know that there are programs that help taper people off. But for my sake, for my own recovery process, it's been absolute abstinence. And the facilities I worked for in Johannesburg, where even when you come in, for example, medication-assisted recovery, it drives towards tapering someone off. Yes, you come in, yes, you need to be tempered off, but the long run is abstinence. Of course, when it comes to food, it's quite a different, tricky thing. But with substances, it's absolute abstinence. I can't take a glass of wine. If I do, you won't have me here. Yeah. Okay.
So does that, I don't know, because at some point I feel like, there are these drinks and drugs that are habit forming.
Yeah.
And I thought it just popped up. Yeah. That's why I had to pass it on to you.
Please.
The question would have been, does someone get to a place of learning how to manage? Yes. That kind of thing.
I get you. I get
So that's when I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Does it mean you go off completely?
So let me just give you a scenario from my experience, right? My attempts in the latter days of my addiction was to manage my addiction, was to drink and still be able to function, was to use and still be able to function. And that's the illusion of every person that is addicted, is that, like you were saying, I want to eat without putting on weight. And one of the things that we learn when you come into recovery is the concept of powerlessness, that you're powerless over what happens when you take a sip. So the best solution or the starting point is like now, and I did give you a scenario that if I had a glass of wine, Abuguzi, I wouldn't be here because I have no clue what would happen. Back in the days when I was still drinking, I would know I have an appointment with you, and I would say, you know what, let me just have one glass of wine. It's what? It's 12, I'll go meet Nabuguzi at 2. One glass of wine. The moment I take that glass of wine, Nabuguzi, something
you don't want to stop.
Would happen, yes. The powerlessness effect would kick in. I want to have more. Next thing you know, I'm putting off my phone. Next thing you know, I'm sending you messages and saying, yeah, I just had an accident here. You know, I'm stuck. Can we postpone? Because I am powerless over what happens when I take the first drink. When I act out on my addiction. I have the choice before. Once I take it, we don't know. We don't know if I'll show up for this interview. We don't know what will happen. I mean, I did tell you that I used something on the 24th of December, and I didn't come to until like a week or two later.
Yeah.
That's powerlessness for me. So we dispel the illusion that I can try something without consequences. That is the biggest delusion about addiction, is that I can manage it. And that's where the concept of powerlessness kicks in, is that I can't manage it.
Yeah.
It's safer, it's wiser, it is smarter for me to focus on abstinence than testing my own willpower or my own control or stuff like that. I could go into details, the biological effect of people with this disease and what happens. There is a biology to explain that, actually, that people like me, due to a lot of other factors, we react differently to substances. Some people, when they drink and get drunk, they feel uncomfortable. People like me, when I drink and get drunk, I get excited. I want more. That's the abnormal reaction. Normal drinking is you take a glass or 2 or 3 and you start feeling like you want to throw up, and you're like, okay, I think I should call it a night. I'm going home. I'm tired. Me, I don't feel that. Yeah. And people with this disease don't feel that.
Or is it something? Oh, now you're driving me to the side effects of emotional eating, where something in the brain gets tinkered with, and your stomach can no longer. No, it's not about emotional eating. It's about, I think, eating fast. I read it somewhere. Something in your brain gets tinkered that your brain can no longer communicate that you are now satisfied.
That you're now satisfied, so you want more and more.
You just keep eating.
More. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's something that we could get into another time. But yeah.
What message would you want to leave behind?
That recovery is possible. That recovery is possible, you know. That it's 2023. We don't have to die from this disease. It is a disease. And I know there's a big illusion about choice and all that stuff. No, the choice is there at the beginning, but addiction in the later stages has no choice. You know, willpower is non-existent. That recovery is possible, really. That if you're struggling, if you're out there, seek help. Help is there. It's not as stigmatized as it used to. I don't know what dream you want to achieve. Any person that is out there listening to me right now, anything that you want to achieve is possible. If you can deal with yourself, you can deal with your emotions and mentally, and whatever is blocking you, sky is the limit. I mean, that's been my own experience. Is that a few years ago I was hopeless, out and about, and now sky is the limit. And it's all because I realized that I had a problem and became willing to work with it. And I guess that's the message. Recovery is possible for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nabuguzi, for having me.
Like we have heard from the man himself, recovery is a challenging but a rewarding journey that requires commitment, support, and the willingness to make changes. With the right mindset and resources, it is possible to overcome addiction and live a fulfilling life. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Hashtime with Nabugozi Chiwanuka. If you loved what you heard, make sure you subscribe to Hashtime with Nabugozi Chiwanuka in your podcast platform of choice and share it with your friends, loved ones, and everyone that you believe is affected by the millennial world around us. Also, feel free to share your insights about what connected with you on social media and be sure to tag us. We are at Hashtime with Nabugozi Chiwanuka on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter, our handle is at HTNK Podcast. You can also use the hashtag HTNK in session. Catch you next week. Remember, we have the new segment coming out every Monday, Unraveling Life with Jagero, and then there is a new episode 106 coming up on next Wednesday. Remember that recovery is possible. Ciao.